But for those of you who are new to us, I just want to give you a little brief background to Panda and why we started the company. So Ros and I have worked in post-16 education, so apprenticeships, traineeships, adult employability, for over 20 years each. We met at a large training provider in South Wales, where I was Director of Quality and Ros was Head of Staff Development. We felt the most important route to raising standards was through the professional development of our staff, but we could never find anything that fitted our industry. If we brought in anything from like schools, education consultants, it would never fit because we are a unique sector in post-16. So we always thought we could do better ourselves, and so we did, and this is why we set up Panda, and here we are 4 years later. Our name Panda comes from the P in Protheroe and the A in Arnold, so P and A spells Panda. See what we did there? 2 years ago, we expanded to take on another member of the team, which is Nikki. You can see in the slide as well. So Nikki has a wealth of experience in adult community education and in mental health, and this allowed us to expand our delivery to include learning development apprenticeship and mental health and wellbeing courses. So, you know, since Nikki's joined the team, we've done really well. So what have we done in our first 4 years? So we have been quite busy. We've delivered over 100 qualifications in training, assessment, IQA and mental health. We've also delivered bespoke training to many providers across Wales through partnerships with different providers, different colleges and the NTFW on different topics like mental health, digital skills, reflective practice, British values, questioning techniques, lots of things that assessors, tutors, trainers in our industry need. We'd like to thank all those that have supported us in that time. We've also had the pleasure of working with a range of consultants to widen our provision. So we work with Dr. Shan Jones in safeguarding. You'll meet Shan later. Alan Prosser of Go Connect, who delivers for us on youth work. Alison Newby, who delivers for us around essential skills. And Nick Barton for management delivery. So we'd like to just say thanks to everybody who's helped us out there. So what have we got for you today? So we've got 3 what we've called micro sessions, because they are literally short, sharp, snappy sessions, which we've chosen topics which we thought were quite relevant considering the current times. So the first session we have coming up was considerations for digital safeguarding with Dr. Shan Jones. So Shan will share her thoughts on what we could consider at the moment when working with our learners across like virtual platforms like this or with social media. Looking after your mental health then with Nikki Ryall. Nikki is also a psychotherapeutic counsellor. I'm glad I said that right, because I usually say it wrong when she's not working for Panda. And lastly, top tips for taking your learning online from our Ros. And then I'm going to briefly finish just talking about the professional learning scoping study, which is being carried out by the Welsh Government for the post-16 sector, and relating it back a little to the kind of things we've got coming up over the next year or so. So we're going to start off with Shan on her considerations for digital safeguarding. So I'm going to transfer over to Shan now and ask Shan to share her screen and unmute. Okay, Shan, if you'd like to unmute. Oh, there you are.
I have, yes. Good morning, everyone. There's the technicalities done. So hopefully everybody can see the screen. There's no problems with that, girls? Yeah, we're all okay. So welcome. Happy birthday, Panda, for today. Hope you're having a big celebration later with a big bottle of bubbly.
Oh, also, we've got to mention happy birthday to Shan as well as Shan's birthday today. Birthday twins.
I'm having a big celebration later with a big bottle. So we'll go from
We're
there.
going to sing, Shan, but we won't.
Oh,
Or crash the whole system.
yeah. Right, well, this morning I'm going to talk to you about safeguarding in the digital world, in this new world that we live in, where we become digital by default, really. And now I'm going to give Ros and Rachel a heart attack, because I'm going to talk to you today about tattoos, about bedrooms, and about billboards. And they're saying, you didn't mention this at all yesterday, Shan, what are you doing? But basically, what today's a very whistle-stop tour through digital safeguarding is going to focus on is what your key duties are, and some of the issues that we need to consider, some of the things that we might not have thought about in this digital world. We've changed from face-to-face teaching to digital content like today that we're doing, and there are some things that we need to keep in mind in order to keep ourselves safe and to keep our learners safe as well. And those are the topics that I'm going to be touching on today. So where's my, it won't let me change you. I'm stuck. Oops. Oh yeah. So we're going to start off with what are your legal responsibilities? And basically we've got a duty of care as trainers, working in the post-16 section section, where we have to think about reasonable measures and appropriate actions. These are some of the key principles that underline all safeguarding practice. And what we mean when we're talking about reasonable measures and appropriate actions are reasonable measures are the policies you put in place in your organizations, whether you are conversant with them, whether you know the detail of them and how they apply to you in practice. Do you take those policy documents with you out into practice? Are you putting them into place? In order to do that effectively, you need to have participated in training which will help you understand those policy documents and also help you to embed that in practice. And in order to do that effectively, we all need support. Now that support can come from a variety of people, usually is your line manager, but sometimes it can be outside organizations. If you're like me, Google is my best friend. Whenever I'm researching something, I go and look on Google and signpost you to lots of things. But we also work in that multi-agency framework. So looking at a local level and a national level, there are organizations out there that will actually support you in putting in place those reasonable measures to keep yourself and your learners safe. That practice bit of it is the appropriate actions, where you need to be able to recognize signs of possible abuse, harassment, bullying with your learners and be able to respond effectively, knowing when to progress it to reporting it on and knowing when to intervene with a much lighter touch. If you have to report it on, you need to know those reporting mechanisms. Who do I report to? How do I do that? And again, this takes us back to those reasonable measures around training. So that is an overarching sort of duty that we have. In this sector, we're working with adults rather than children, and the key principles underlying that really are about prevention and protection, but also empowering your learners to make decisions for themselves and use you as a supporting person in a relationship with them, albeit a professional relationship, so that they find you approachable to pass on any concerns that they have that might arise in the workplace. So you're empowering them to do things, because at the end of the day, you are accountable in your professional practice. So you need to make sure that you are conversant with that policy and the practice, and that recognizing, responding and reporting. Now, oops. I'm going to hand over to Ros now, because she's the technical whiz, and we're going to do a little Menti here about recognizing different types of abuse. So Ros, can you pick up from here?
Okay, everybody. All right, so I'll take over from here. So if everybody's got a phone, a separate device from what you're viewing us on, if you go to menti.com in your browser, when you get to menti.com, you can just put in the code you see at the top of the screen there. So that's 93 56 39 7. And then you'll be able to just put in your views. What we will see a live word cloud in front of our very eyes. It's very exciting. If anybody has any issues, please just pop it in the chat for me. So that's menti.com, 93 56 39 7.
Way.
Some good ones coming in, Shan?
Yeah, lots coming in. I like that one. Yeah. Revenge porn.
There's so many, isn't there, Shan? And that,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'm seeing things coming up that I've never heard of before.
Fat shaming, yeah. Sharing images. Gonna have a lovely little word cloud to share with you all at the end of this. Phishing content, yeah. Identity theft.
Some excellent ones coming in. Thanks, everyone. So for those that haven't seen a word cloud before, in this way, using Menti, the words that are the largest are the most popular words. So it seems that most of you have heard of things like upskirting, grooming, cyberbullying and trolling.
Yeah.
Back over to you, Shan. You're the expert.
Okay, right. Well, as you can see there, loads of stuff, and yet you're all familiar with some of these terms. The key difference between face-to-face safeguarding and safeguarding in the digital world is it's almost opaque. It's very complex, and often it's not obvious what is going on. But it is still underlined by those same principles of abuse, where it's about control and coercion, and it's actually aimed at making you feel absolutely horrible. So it has a big impact on your feelings and emotions. And as a result of that, sometimes we can respond inappropriately. I mean, when you look at what's there, bullying online cyberbullying is now classed as an e-crime, and that offensive, malicious behaviour works the same way online as it does offline. It's a way of denigrating individuals, humiliating them, making them feel small, and it's done with sometimes with intent, but sometimes with thoughtlessness. If we think about sharing images, sometimes we might share a photo that somebody else actually doesn't like about themselves. So when we're thinking about sharing photos or images, think about how that image would make other people feel there. Again, with upskirting, this recently became a crime. The Voyeurism Act in 2019 came into law, and upskirting, for those of you who are not familiar with it, but it seems quite a few of you are, is when somebody takes photos underneath your clothing without consent. And now that is classed as an e-crime. So there's a wealth of legislation out there that can actually prosecute and bring to account people who participate in these activities. Trolling, very central there. We often hear it in the Twitter world, people actually harassing or making inappropriate comments or sending messages or videos. If you look at female MPs, the amount of abuse that they get online is huge compared to male MPs. Male MPs still get that abuse, but female MPs, especially around a sexual context, get loads of trolling there. So too many to touch on today, but as you can see from that, all those things are in our digital world and can have an effect if we don't put into place a lot of different things. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, which just, oops, ooh, where have I gone? I've lost my screen. Ooh, there it is. Share it. There we go. So it's important that not only now do we recognize the mainstream forms of abuse, physical, emotional, sexual and neglect, but we also need to have some knowledge and understanding about all these other types of online abuse that can happen. So it's important that we upskill ourselves, because we have to be the modelers for our learners in how to negotiate, respond and report these things on. Right, let's make sure I press the right button. Is it going? Oops, no. Doesn't want to share. There we go. So this can be problematic in everyday life, because in your sector there is actually no defined definition of bullying and harassment. I put two out there, but it can vary enormously. And one of the big problems with it is that if we're working with very small organizations, perhaps a local company that's only got 3 or 4 employees, they might not have these in place. So it's really important that when you talk to your learners in that initial meeting that you set up with them, is that you set out boundaries for understanding these issues around bullying and harassment and some of the other digital forms of abuse, so that you talk through them and get them to understand that you can help them solve these problems. So this is now where I'm going to go off-piste a little bit and talk about the tattoos, the billboards and the bedrooms. While we were setting up this morning, it was quite funny. My husband walked behind me in his pajamas, which caused us all to laugh, but actually could be really inappropriate. So think about the space you are sharing. I put the picture of the bedroom up there with children in, with toys, with a view out of the window. What does that tell you about the space you're in? What does it tell you about the person you're sharing that image with? I'm in my study today. Behind me, you can see pictures of my children's graduation. You can see all my messy files. What does it tell you about me? So think about the space, your private space. What are you giving away in that private space? Do you need to have something that is nondescript behind you if you're meeting your learners in a digital space? What are you comfortable with? Think of it as you're inviting a guest into your home. You wouldn't necessarily give them a tour of your bedroom and all your private and confidential information. It's the same with your digital space. You really need to think about what messages are you sending, what information are you giving out in that digital space that you're occupying. If we go on to our lovely David Beckham there and his tattoos, think of your digital space like a tattoo. It's there permanently. Once you put it out there, it's very difficult to get rid of your digital footprint. So what you are posting online needs to be very considered. You need to think about that private aspects of it. Have you looked at your privacy settings? Have you locked down things that you don't want people to see? Think about the images on your social media feeds. Do you want your learners to actually be able to access all of those? Good housekeeping around your own social media is vitally important. Check it on a regular good housekeeping basis. Have a clear out, make sure that it's still as you want it to be, and only the people that you want to see that information can actually see it. It might come down to, in your professional practice, you use a different name, a different way of being known. So you've got to think about all these things when you're doing that. And then finally we got the billboard, and I've put the infamous one up of 350 million because I thought that statement and the bus illustrated what the digital world is like very well. It's constantly moving, it's traveling around. You have no control over it once you have posted. So you have to make sure that what you post is professional, is locked down and private, because once it is out there, you have very little control about who shares it and where it goes. So think about those things in relation to your own practice and keeping yourself safe, but it's also a good route into talking to your learners about how to keep them safe. So personal and professional boundaries are really important. Have that first conversation with your learner, set up that relationship, explore with them what is acceptable and unacceptable in your digital communications. Remember to talk to them about it's a different form of communication, so you might not be able to see faces because you're communicating through words mainly. Know how to report and block. Have a conversation with them about what they're sharing and who they're sharing with. But the whole essence of safeguarding is knowing your learner and keeping those professional relationships and offering them support for what you were doing. Now, handing over to Ros again, we're going to try and identify a few gaps that you might have in your knowledge. So I want you just to participate in this little poll here, and we'll see what the results bring up. So over to you, Ros.
Okay, thanks, Shan. I've shared the poll. Hopefully everybody can see that. Just select the ones that apply to you if they do. And then we'll share.
Oh.
I will share the results at the end. And, you know, we're just asking everybody to be honest here, because it's just really good to see, you know, what we have thought of, things we've missed in these times. I'll leave the voting open for another half a minute. So almost everybody has voted. Thank you for that. Some interesting stuff coming in. And I'm just going to end the poll now. And there's the results, Shan.
Wow. So as you can see, as I said at the very beginning, we're in the digital world by default. COVID has changed from our face-to-face meetings with our learners to actually communicating. So therefore our safeguarding practice has to change. We have to make sure that we are secure in our understanding, that we've got the skills and knowledge to implement safeguarding in a responsible way that meets the requirements of our own organisations, but more importantly, keeps our learners safe as well. So you can see from that, you know, just over half have checked their privacy settings. So perhaps something to go away with at the end of the session is to look at what media you use and check those settings. It's really easy to do. Google it and the guides come up. Safeguarding, your safeguarding policy. Again, only about 55% of you have checked your guidance. Go back and have a read. What you think might be acceptable might be very different in your policy documents with your organisation. So make sure that you know and understand your policy documents very well. And similarly, a better response on the apps and social media accounts. And only a few of you have created a pseudonym for professional use. Something to consider. You might not feel is appropriate for you, but it might be a way of going forward. So that's very interesting, gives us a lot of food for thought going forward. Thank you very much for that. So to sum up at the end of this session, things that we need to bear in mind when we're thinking about safeguarding in this digital world, it is still a relationship that we're participating in. We have that duty of care. Remember, because it's an offline relationship doesn't mean that the respect boundaries change. We should still be respectful. Putting basic boundary rules in it are like, if you wouldn't say it to somebody face to face, don't send it or post it. remember that communication, the way we interact in that relationship is very different. So we need to think about that lack of facial expression, that lack of tone of voice, of body language, that we can't. Things that we write down can often be misinterpreted. A go away big flag is, remember, whatever you communicate for you and your learner, it can be traced. It will be out there somewhere. There are ways of pulling that information back. Very importantly for both you and your learners, make sure that your personal information is secure, that you are not sharing it and giving people the opportunity to participate in phishing or identity fraud or trolling. All those things can help you to stay safe. And finally, reporting. Do you know where to go and what to do if you are reporting abuse online? We've actually put together at the end of this, oops, where we go? I'll go in again. Right. We've put together some links at the end of this slide. There's a wealth of information out there. You could spend forever going through it. We've put some up there that we think are really useful. Click on them, have a look, and see what you think. And if you would like some of this information in greater detail, contact Panda. We are offering a safeguarding level 2 in September to refresh everybody. So if you'd like to participate in that, contact Ros or Rachel. And I just spend a few minutes, because I know I'm just coming to the end of my time, on any questions.
Thanks, Shan. The only question we had was about upskirting. I did my best to answer that, but you then went into that in a lot more detail, so thank you for that. But also, I think Suzanne said that, to be fair, maybe over the last 3 months, she's guessing that quite a few of us have done less delivery, and that's when the poll was.
We're in that transition phase from face-to-face to more digital interaction, and so it gives us the opportunity to refresh our knowledge, upskill our understanding, and make sure that we're ready for that challenge, because it is quite a different way of working, and there are different aspects that we need to consider when we're working in that digital work. So what I would recommend is read your policy, ask for additional training from your organisations, and make sure that you model good practice to your learners and your students.
That's great, thank you, Shan. If there's no more questions then, guys, Shan can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, and the next slide is understand it. That's just a little advert for our next one, and the final one are the links. And thank you very much for taking part this morning, everyone.
Thank you, Shan. Thanks very much. In my excitement to get started, I forgot to say who you were. So just in case anyone's interested.
Yeah, and I did
Shan's background. Sorry. In Shan's background, formerly she's Education Officer for NSBCC, and she now runs the community interest company Positive Vibes International, where she provides consultancy services on emotional health and well-being for children and young people. So yeah, thanks for your wealth of knowledge, Shan, and go and enjoy your day, your happy birthday.
My pizza and pass the parcel party with the grandchildren.
Lovely, that sounds fab. Thank you very much again. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Okay, lovely. Right, if I can now get back to my screen. Bear with me a second. Let me just, there we are. Right, okay. So yeah, thanks very much, Shan. It's definitely given us all something to think about, particularly now, you know, we're all using digital a lot more, and maybe those of you who are trainers are maybe not doing quite so much, but those who are maybe apprenticeship assessors still seeing their learners at least once a month, so you know, usually via Zoom in people's homes, so absolutely relevant, and that's fab. Next up we have Nikki Ryall. So as I introduced Nikki earlier, Nikki's our learning and development apprenticeship facilitator. So she helps all our apprentices who are doing the level 3 learning and development qualification through their qualification, and she also delivers our mental health training. Nikki's worked previously in adult education in FE, and has trained as a counsellor and a hypnotherapist, so she's got lots of experience in the area. Over to you now, Nikki. Do you want to take your mute off and share your screen? Fab. Just need to unmute. There you are.
Okay, here I am. So yeah, as Rachel said, just to give you a little background, not going to go on too much, but I've been training for the past 4 years to become a psychotherapeutic counsellor, hence my interest in mental health, all things mental health. And I've really enjoyed delivering some of the mental health stuff that we've been doing at Panda. So today, my session is called Stop the Pandemonium. Very clever play on words, obviously. But the idea behind this is that we would like to talk a little bit about stress and anxiety, quite current themes at the moment, and how we can develop strategies for ourselves and also pass things on to our learners as role models, excuse me, as we start to move forward to going back out into the work, into life, into offices, into all sorts of other places. We've called this session Smoke Alarms, Seahorses and Self-Help, which sounds a bit strange, but I am a great believer in giving people strange ideas or strange messages, and then they're more easy to remember. So that's my teaching and learning bit coming in there, I suppose. These are strange times we're living in, very strange. You can see right in the middle of that picture, COVID-19. I don't think anybody on the planet now doesn't know what that is. It's been an exceptionally difficult time. The global pandemic means that a lot of people are feeling very anxious. Some people you may not have considered before may have had anxiety, but now lots of people have it. It's a huge issue. Other issues are change, loss of freedom. We've all, as a collective on the whole planet, actually endured loss, trauma, and you know, the potential for anxiety and stress during these times is huge. But when you look at that image, it's quite a pretty image, isn't it? And I chose it because it's relevant in this session today. The one thing that we are looking at on that image, I would wager, is COVID-19. So even though there's lots of positive things around it, pretty daisies and painted pebbles, the one thing that's flagging up is COVID-19. And that's relevant for what we're going to go on to talk about. So we're going to talk about our own personal smoke alarm. We're going to talk about the amygdala. Now there's an image that I think everybody would suggest might be scary. If you saw that coming in your rearview mirror, you'd be thinking that either you're in a film Jurassic Park, or perhaps you need to be a bit worried and you need to kind of run away. So why am I going to be talking about the amygdala, and what is it? What is the amygdala? Well, the amygdala is effectively your own personal smoke alarm. It's a part of your brain. In fact, you have one on each side of your brain, next to your ears, here and here. And it's a very small thing, but it's very significant in terms of our historical brain function. So what it does is it alerts us to threat. It is what keeps us safe, basically. It allows us to notice bad things. In that image before, our amygdala would have been triggered by the words COVID-19. That's the part of the brain that's alert to threats. It doesn't encourage us to focus on the good. In fact, it is said that the brain will work to identify and recognize bad things much more significantly and much more readily than it does good things. So perhaps we have to try and prioritize that. As I said before, we're all in a state of change. We're all experiencing extreme conditions, lockdown, concerns about family, friends. We haven't been able to contact each other quite as well as we could. That physical contact with other people, that hugging, that makes a difference as well. But our amygdala is constantly alert. And sometimes, particularly in conditions where we are at the moment, that might have a tendency to just overreact. So if we think about it as a smoke alarm, what we're thinking about is sometimes the smoke alarm might be a bit faulty. So if your smoke alarm is quite close to your toaster, for example, if it's quite close to the kitchen and you burn your toast one morning, the smoke alarm might go off. Now, actually, because the toaster probably won't set fire to your whole house, that's a bit of an overreaction. And sometimes our amygdala does that. So the question is your toast overdone or is your house actually on fire? And that's really what you've got to try and decide when you're trying to monitor or assess your own levels of anxiety, which I say at this particular moment will be especially heightened because of the situation that we're facing. So when this smoke alarm goes off, I'm going to carry on with the smoke alarm analogy for a little while. The smoke alarm goes off. Okay, so at home, if it's just a toast burning, what you might open the door, you might take the battery out of the smoke alarm for a short time, although I wouldn't advise that. But what happens when our amygdala smoke alarm goes off? 3 potential reactions. I'd like to call them the 3 Fs. The first one is flight. It doesn't mean to say that we're going to sprout wings, but actually we want to get out of there. We want to run away. That's an instinctive reaction to fear. If you saw that dinosaur in your rearview mirror, I would wager that you'd put your foot on that accelerator and you try and get out of there as quickly as you possibly could. That's one of our reactions, the will to run away, the wish to get out of there. And at the moment, we've been in lockdown. We haven't been going anywhere, so that's not going to be happening. Another potential reaction is the fight reaction. The close proximity between anxiety and anger is very well documented in lots of counselling information and studies. It's very, very easy to notice that your mood might be shifted. You might have a short temper. You might not be quite so understanding of people around you. That's the fight reflex. That's if a bear was running towards you and it's quite a small one and you thought you could probably get away with it. Would you fight that bear? If something attacks you, are you going to fight it? You might run away. You might fight it. There are different responses. And the final one is freeze. An inability to do anything. It might lead in some cases to procrastination. Have you found perhaps that you're unable to concentrate on your work, that you're unable to be productive, you can't remember things, that your brain is in a kind of fog? That's because you're frozen. Your brain can't concentrate on all these things at once. It's already panicking about the smoke. It's already panicking about COVID, about friends, family, jobs, everything that's going on the planet. When are we going to get back to normal? And then when we do start going out, that's another change. That's a significant change again. And so again, that ability to be heightened in our anxiety and stress levels will allow us then to perhaps fall into some of these patterns. So if these are things that you've recognized in yourself over the past however many months, then that is completely natural. These are all natural reactions to keep us safe. Now, what I'd like you to do, I'd like to hand over to you folks and ask you on a Menti, another word cloud, to identify some of the physical symptoms you think might be associated with anxiety. So I've given you some of the mood system symptoms and things, but what about the physical symptoms? What is there?
Bear
So
with
Ros,
me,
if
Nikki.
I can just...
Yeah, bear with me. It's just
That's all right.
Good old tech.
So while we're doing this, I think I had a few symptoms myself this morning, to be perfectly honest. with all these people online and Wi-Fi being what it is. I think I was exhibiting some of the physical symptoms. So anything that you identify here, I'm sure I might have identified in myself this morning.
Okay, so we've got another Menti then, folks. Same website, menti.com. You might have to press refresh on your device because there's a new code, and it's 1460061. Okay. Again, any issues, just pop it in the chat for me. As I say, you might have to refresh your screen.
Somebody spotted me coughing. Yes. Yes.
Definitely have
clearing your throat, dry mouth, all of that. Yes. Yeah. Oh, these are coming up thick and fast. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Feeling sick. Yes. That's irritability. Yeah. That relates to the anger bit. Headaches, dry mouth. Yes. I've had those this morning, a dry mouth and the cough. Chest pain. That's another one that is very much associated with anxiety. Certainly, you know, there are a great many people who, when they suffer from a panic attack, can actually feel like they're having a heart attack and can actually go off to A&E. I met a woman fairly recently who was in that place, and she said she genuinely thought that she was going to die from a heart attack. So obviously, once you're in that place, that just serves to heighten the anxiety even more. Yeah, feeling confused. Yeah, what was I doing? Where was I going? I can't concentrate. Sweating, absolutely. Sweaty palms, but you can be sweaty anywhere really, I suppose. All sorts of things. So I'm trying to see the smaller ones. Butterflies in your stomach. Yeah, so you can actually have lower levels of physical symptoms. Tiredness, yeah, confusion. All these can be extreme, you know, or maybe lower level symptoms of anxiety. Lack of sleep, that's another one. Weight loss, yes. Weight gain sometimes, because some people's levels of anxiety and stress encourage them to eat more sometimes. You can have an upset tummy, crying, yeah, absolutely. So lots and lots of those. Gosh, we've got 44 of those up there, having participated. So lots and lots of you recognise these symptoms of anxiety and stress. Another one that I can't see, but it might be there, is the inflammation of skin conditions or existing health conditions. And skin conditions in particular can be exacerbated, can be made much worse by anxiety and stress. In fact, in a presentation that I was doing not that long ago, somebody identified that her husband had a really stressful job, really in a bad place in his work environment, and had encountered a rash, and he had it, and it was quite severe, and he was back and forth to the doctors trying to find out. Nobody really knew what this rash was. And then a few months later, he actually changed his job, and the rash went away virtually overnight. So skin conditions as well can be made much worse. Breathlessness, overthinking, overeating, brain fog, yeah, all sorts of stuff there. Thank you so much for your participation on that. The main one coming through is headaches, yeah. So what do you do about that? That's interesting, isn't it? If we have a headache, have a tendency to just pop a couple of pills maybe to take it away. I wonder whether that's the right course of action. We'll be looking at some strategies a bit later for anxiety. So perhaps better to prevent the anxiety to some degree, rather than just coping with any symptoms that we might get as a result. Okay, so thank you for your participation in that. It was great. Right, now we talked about smoke alarms, so we now know what the smoke alarm is. That's the amygdala, one on either side of our head, as I said. We've also got another part of our brain called the hippocampus, which is, it looks a bit like a seahorse, so that's why they say that's in fact where the name comes from. So the seahorse is right next to the amygdala in our brains, and actually the seahorse is about memory. So it's the memory function in our brain, the hippocampus. It's got a critical role. It's a bit like a filing cabinet and filing system, and it allows us to form, organize and store new memories, as well as connecting certain sensations and emotions to those memories. So if you have a particularly poignant memory or a particularly vivid memory, the idea is that this seahorse, that hippocampus, is what's actually storing that, and you can remember it very vividly because it's attached to sensations and emotions. And most of our memories are connected to smells and sights, and smell in particular is one that is very easy to trigger a memory from. Now, I just also want to talk about the amygdala, because the amygdala also stores memories, but it stores trauma memories. It's very specific. If you've been through a trauma, it won't get stored in the normal way in the little filing cabinet system, which the hippocampus sorts out. It will actually be stored more directly and can be triggered very quickly and very acutely by one of our senses, in particular the sense of smell. And that's interesting to note, I suppose. So if you are actually triggered by something, for example, some people are triggered by the smell of a hospital. You know, that means something significant has happened, often something traumatic, and people can be put off by that smell or a smell that's very similar because they can associate that with whatever it was that actually happened at the time. And in terms of a trauma memory, symptoms can be very extreme. It actually means that the person is physically exhibiting exactly the same physical reaction and emotional reaction as they would have done in the trauma itself. And that then obviously can lead to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a very long-term condition. Right, but we've got rather gloomy, and to be honest, the weather's a bit gloomy outside anyway. So let's try and reset things and cheer ourselves up a bit. Stop making me feel quite so anxious, breathless, coughing. See if we can have some nice memories. So Ros, if you could, we've got another Menti coming, which we'd like you to participate in. This is a little bit more of a cheery one. So what smell, sound, sight, touch or taste reminds you of a nice memory? So it can be a smell, a sound, a sight, a touch of something, a feeling something, or taste reminds you of a nice memory. And to start the ball rolling, to give you an idea, so candy floss is mine. Oh, sound of the sea, that's a nice coconut. Yeah, the sea is a very popular one. Butterflies, the sight of butterflies. Oh, these are nice, aren't they? Oh yes, this beats all the heart palpitations and the horrible things we had earlier. I'm liking this word cloud more than any of the others I think so far. Cut grass, that's a very popular one. Flowers, the sight of a river, the feeling of waves maybe, or maybe just the sound of waves. Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, mine is candy floss, ideas of being at the fairground with family and friends when I was a child. The feel of sand, yeah, sand on your feet, you know, in between your toes. How does that feel? Interestingly, I went to a mindful retreat at some point a few years ago, and we were encouraged to go and walk on grass as a mindful activity. And that was really interesting because we rarely as adults walk with bare feet on grass, but that can be a really nice sensation if you feel that that takes you back to a happy memory of childhood. Pink lilies, that's very specific. Smell of rain, lavender, gosh, there's some lovely ones there. Spices, yes, I can almost smell all these things, are absolutely beautiful. And blue sky, popcorn, yeah, popcorn's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, lovely. See, isn't it sad though, really, that we have less of those coming up in our word cloud than we did the physical symptoms of anxiety? And I think that just goes to show that the negative things are always flagged up by our brains. Much, much easier to remember and relate to the negative things on oh, we've had a little message from somebody to say she can only do one word. Sorry. Clearly, if you wanted to participate more than that and you can't, that's a bit of a disadvantage. So sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to reshare my screen, but thank you for participating in that. As I say, it really is important to try and focus on some of the more positive things sometimes, rather than thinking about all the time with the negatives. And that can be something actually that can help us with our ability to overcome, cope with, or deal with stress and anxiety. So what solutions are there? Because there are all these really horrible physical symptoms and of course the emotions that go with that and the feelings. So what are the solutions? What can we do in order to help ourselves and or pass on information to our learners? Obviously we're not experts, so we need to be a little careful about that, but we can certainly suggest certain basic things. What can we pass on? One of the first ones is visualization. So I was saying about imagining you were back in a place, you know, you might think of the smell of popcorn. Where does that take you back to? Perhaps just 5 minutes when you know, if you are getting a headache, perhaps just 5 minutes, if you can take the time to shut your eyes and think of a really positive, nice memory, that might actually help. Just sending yourself back to whatever safe space you have is a tactic that's used in counselling to calm people if they are feeling extremely anxious or stressed. Gratitude, that sounds like a funny one, doesn't it? But actually that's a really important one. That's a way to try and start persuading your brain to try and focus on slightly more positive things. So if we think every day of 3 things that we're grateful for, perhaps, and that tends to be what the research would suggest, we can start to train our brains to actually have some idea that our lives are positive, despite the fact there are challenges and difficulties in them. Progressive muscle relaxation. This is a technique that I learned actually when I trained to be a hypnotherapist, but it can be done, and there's lots of places online on YouTube where there are actual videos and audio recordings for this. You could even record yourself on your phone and play it back to yourself, or you could just do it by thinking about it. It's about thinking about each group of muscles in your body individually, and thinking about how they can clench and then relax, and going through that systematically from either the top of your head or from the bottom of your feet to do the whole of the rest of your body, particularly before bed if you're feeling particularly anxious or stressed, can have quite a good effect on being able to sleep. Breathing, well, we all do that, don't we? Shortness of breath can be a real issue if you're feeling anxious, but we tend to breathe in quite a shallow way a lot of the time, and this is obviously made worse by anxiety. And in a minute I'm going to show you a little breathing video, and I'm going to ask you to actually participate in that for just 1 minute. That helps to calm the parasympathetic nervous system, it helps to get oxygen to the brain, it actually helps with a huge range of anxiety symptoms. There's a little acronym called UCOPE that I'll go through on the next slide, which is a technique for being able to recenter yourself if you're feeling overwhelmingly anxious. And then, of course, there's therapy. If somebody really is struggling for a long time over a consistent period with anxiety, having those symptoms a lot, it's worth recommending that they go to see their GP and seek out some form of potential therapy. And there's so much therapy on the market. I mean, clearly you wouldn't want to say to somebody, I think you need therapy, but, you know, just maybe suggesting that some of those symptoms may need to settle down. Perhaps they need to go and see their GP. Here comes the video. Okay, so triangle breathing, it's called. Well, it starts with a triangle, and then I was trying to work out, is it an octagon, I think, that it ends up with. Some of you might be familiar with this. So I'm going to play the video, and I'm going to encourage you all to actually breathe in and out according to that little video, just while I talk about the UCOPE acronym. So we can do 2 things at once with any luck. Okay, so I'd like you to focus on the video and breathe in and out as the shape gets bigger and then as it gets much smaller again, and keep doing that. So UCOPE stands for Understand, Check Reality, Organise Thought, Prevent Pressure and Engage with the Environment. Understanding is huge in terms of allowing people to get hold of any symptoms of anxiety and stress they have. If they understand that actually their heart rate will raise and they're not actually having a heart attack, then it can allow them to go, oh, right, okay, so I'm not in that much danger. I just need to try and check myself out. What's happening? Why am I reacting to this? Is there a reason that I'm feeling particularly anxious? Is it because I've got to give a presentation in front of 30 to 40 people online and I'm a bit worried about my Wi-Fi, for example? If I understand the reason for my anxiety, I can address it more readily. Check reality. If my smoke alarm is going, flashing, shrieking at me, I need to check my reality. I need to check, am I really in danger? And if not, perhaps I just need to do some breathing to reset myself. I need to organize my thoughts. If I've done my breathing, then that means that my thoughts will be more organized because there's more oxygen to my brain. Prevent pressure. Stop blaming myself and putting extra pressure on myself for feeling anxious, for feeling stressed. These feelings are completely normal. And engage with the environment. What's around me? Is there really a danger there? Can I come back to being centered in my environment? Looking at things, examining them, thinking about them can sometimes take our mind off worries. Focusing on counting things or just looking at very tiny things around us or what's in the room can actually help, because it takes our mind off whatever it is that we're feeling anxious about. Just getting on to the next slide, folks. Okay, now we can see quite an anxious looking panda there. He's really very unhappy, and his job is to remind us that actually we can put these things into place. We don't need to wait until the last minute, until we're feeling really anxious and we've got that presentation to do. We can plan ahead. So if you know that you have a slight tendency to be anxious before a huge presentation, for example, or if you're meeting a learner for the first time, or you've got a meeting with your line manager, whatever it is, or even going to the supermarket these days can make us feel a little bit anxious, something that we haven't done before. I went out for a meal with a friend over the weekend, and I was very aware of how anxious I was because it's a new experience after lockdown. So think, choose and remember. Think, what strategies could you try? And we've actually developed a little handout that we're going to be sending out afterwards so that you can maybe brainstorm some of those strategies. Think about what you could try. Would it be breathing? Would it be visualization? Would it be the U-cope mechanism? What things could you actually do to lessen your anxiety? And as I say, breathing and progressive muscle relaxation are really two of the best. Which strategies are you going to choose? Are you going to have a regular bedtime routine, which might help you? Are you going to reduce alcohol, which is also known to reduce stress and anxiety? Are you going to cut out caffeine, which also makes anxiety and stress much worse? What are you going to do in terms of your strategies? And how will you remember them? As I say, our handy little handout will allow you to perhaps remember them. And then once you've got into that pattern, try to keep going back to them and remember them. Because if you plan that, then that will help you in the future. That helps in the future because our brains are very flexible. If we put things into practice and keep practicing them, we're building up our little connections in our brains between our neurons and making sure that all those little pathways are reinforced and reinforced, building up the grey matter around them, which means that our pathway will more likely go to our strategy for coping rather than anything else, rather than our panicking, rather than our shallow breathing. We'll think, oh no, wait a minute, I need to get a handle on this. I need to just do a little bit of breathing and maybe have an early night, and then I'll feel a little better. And now, breathe. And that's what I'm going to do because I'm pretty much finished my session now. I just need to leave you with this. So we are running a mental health and wellbeing level 2 Agorage unit. We've been running it online for a number of months now. We did it face-to-face back in January, but we've had to move it online, and we've had some lovely feedback, and it's really nice to see that we've had this feedback. So I'm just going to leave you with that, and there is a link at the bottom there where you can go directly to find out more about that course. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks ever so much for that. Well, I'm certainly feeling more relaxed after that. I love that breathing triangle. It really does help you focus and breathe. So yeah, it's really, really good. Thank you very much. Right, I hope everyone is still feeling great. I can see everybody still there. That's excellent. Our next little micro session is going to be from our very own Ros. So Ros is going to give you her top tips for taking learning online, and we're really lucky in Panda to have Ros with us, because she's very digitally natural. She was in a few
Digitally
years
natural,
ago.
is that a thing?
Digitally natural, yes. And a few years ago, she was actually an IT tutor in a training provider, back in the days of a floppy disk.
All right, thank you, Rachel.
She has always loved a digital tool. So to be fair, since lockdown, she's taken everything on, and you have been through a bit of a learning curve, haven't you, yourself?
Yes, I have, and hopefully going to share some of those things we've learned.
Yeah,
what to do and what not to do.
Lovely. I'll leave you to it, Ros.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so thanks everybody for sticking with us. So yeah, I wanted to take you through a few things that we've learned over the past, I can't believe I'm saying it's 5 months. It's 5 months that since we packed up, went home. We actually, Panda, we came home and locked down a week before Boris locked us all down. So I've pretty much been in this room, I've lost count, but for 5 months. Can I just say, I don't always have that banner in the background, just thought I'd make an effort today. But yeah, I just wanted to share some stuff with you today, things that we've learned. Now, actually, somebody said in the chat just now that maybe we haven't all been delivering over the past few months. But I feel that actually going forward, I think a lot of companies, a lot of training providers have thought, well, actually, this is the way that we're going to continue. So I thought it was really good that we sort of maybe just go through a few things that can happen, things to think of. I'm going to sort of hopefully take you through a few things that I've experienced. But again, feel free to put things in the chat. I'll get to it either in the presentation or I'll wait to the end. But I will be asking you to do a couple of things on the way through. So now, don't worry, I haven't got a wireless, but I just want to look this morning at a few things that have sort of highlighted themselves to me over the past 5 months of online learning, because, you know, the first thing somebody said to us was, oh, it's all right for you though, you can just put all your training online. Well, yes, okay. And I thought I was pretty good, you know, as I don't know if I'm digitally natural or whatever Rachel called me, but you know, I thought I was pretty good at all this stuff, but I've learned so much. It's been such a learning curve. So I'm just going to take you through a couple of things we've learned and some top tips that you can hopefully use. So very first thing, look, it's been hard, isn't it? It's been where I have pretty much every day lived on Zoom and Teams. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have too. So I just wanted to sort of look at things that can happen. I'm not saying they have happened, things that could happen.
Technology kills viruses in just one. What did you do, Mom? Dad, holy crap!
Solamente tenemos que registrar autonomía curricular y el área socioemocional de los niños, porque esa parte está quedando bien. Perdón.
Goodbye. All right.
Perdón.
Talk to you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
See you guys.
Tony!
Can you hear us?
Tony!
Oh no! Don't. Jen, call him. Oh my gosh! Hold on, I'm gonna text a couple pictures of that. Oh. Oh. Oh boy.
What's up?
Tony, I can see you.
We can all see you.
And this meditation is great for bringing about a sense of relaxation, well-being and calm. So starting just quickly by breathing in and breathing out. And it's really challenging, I know, with children home from school and working from home, but just trying to just keep all of those distractions out of the way.
Maple, can you stop just for a second? 3, 2, 1. More cold air. 3, 2, 1. Cold air continues across the area tonight. Potential for some frost and freeze for some of us. Warm up, it's going to take... Hey, hey, come here. Come here. Come here. Sit. 3, 2, 1. Frost and freeze for some of us again tonight. The cold air is lingering through much of the week. We'll show you when the best chance of precipitation is with Futurecast. Maple. 3, 2, 1. Maple, excuse me. Hello, come here. Come here. Come here. Do you want to be in this tease? Is that what you want? Come here. Just lean up here. I can do this. 3, 2, 1. Another night where we may have frost or a freeze for some of us. And the cool weather, it's sticking around for much of the week. We'll show you when the warm-up finally gets here.
I love that video. And actually, we were doing a practice run of this the other day, showing that video. And I said to everybody afterwards, I said, that guy, why didn't he shut the dog out? And with that, my partner comes in with a cup of tea and the cat. So it can happen to the best of us. So we're going to give you hopefully a couple of tips to avoid that happening. But I just want to ask, really quick poll, anything like that actually happened to you guys during lockdown? Just a quick one, just to see if it's just me. Yeah, no, well, you lucky people that it hasn't happened to. I've had cats going across the keyboard. We've had lots of stuff going on. Hopefully that won't happen. However, just a quick one there. It's quite easy. Okay, it's quite easy for distractions as well for people the other end that are watching you in this new world that we are experiencing. So thanks for doing that. That was a nice little quick poll there. Okay, so what I want to look at then, the basics, okay? There we go. Suzanne, our office is in the garden and a neighbour called in with tomato plants. Excellent. How helpful. But yeah, we've heard lots of stories of things that are happening during meetings, hopefully not through your training though, but you never know. So I just want to, lots of people talking about their animals, excellent. So just wanted to go through a couple of the basics, and please don't think I'm teaching you how to suck eggs, because some of these things I thought I knew before I went into this online world, and it's all happened. Now, what I'm talking about today is primarily virtual classrooms, so live online learning rather than anything else. And that can be in a group, or that can actually be one-to-one. If you're just speaking with your learners, it could just be one-to-one. So the fundamentals. Now, of course, we've all put our best on today because we knew we were going to be seen, but I can guarantee that sometimes maybe I have jeans on. I'm not going to make you all put your videos on and stand up so we can see if you've got your jeans or your pajamas on. But we've got to make sure that we are professional at all times. And I think the thing I've learned the most is that even if I'm making an effort, sometimes people at the other end feel comfortable. They're in their own space. They don't feel like they need to make a change, their behavior, maybe the way they dress. So I would definitely say, look, we are professionals. And I think it's harder in this new world to think of this as actually your classroom. Okay, so I would definitely say prepare your background. I had to have a word with everybody just to make sure that backgrounds are okay, and I had to tidy mine up. So it's about a professional mindset more than anything. And the way you're dressed. I mean, I've had meetings with quite sort of, you know, people high up in their organizations that are in hoodies, and that's fine, you know, but that's fine for them. But as a trainer, as a tutor, professionalism. Try and get rid of all those distractions if you can. I know it's hard. We've got people at home. I mean, in my house, I've got 2 very needy cats, a partner in another room. So we're trying to stay away from each other. But sometimes, you know, things happen. But do your best. Now, one thing I would say that I've really learned is about lighting. I bought a light, which sounds an easy thing to do, but all the lights had gone because everybody was doing the same thing in lockdown. But I did find a light. Look, if you can't get a specialist ring light or whatever they call it, just a lamp. But just to give you an idea, this is me without the light. And this is me with the light. You could argue it's better without. But it makes such a difference. So if you are right, now that's a really good thing that Suzanne's just said. The difficulty in your office then, Suzanne, is rain on the roof. Noises. One thing I would say, I've got this ridiculous Madonna style thing on, but I managed to get a headset. Again, something that sold out really quickly in lockdown. But this, when you are training online, this will cancel out. If you buy the right ones, you can get one that cancels out any background noise, and it really works. So yeah, think about that if you can. If you can get a microphone that will cancel out noise. I know that Zoom and Teams are looking at that at the moment to try and sort of introduce that bit of noise cancellation, but really handy. That's the only reason, apart from the fact I've had awful lockdown hair, that I wear one of these things. So platforms. There's so many platforms out there, guys. And what I would like you to do, I'll be honest, my favorite is Zoom. That's not everybody's favorite, but the one I've been using throughout lockdown the most is Zoom. So in the chat, could you just put in, if you have been using a platform, what you use, please? That would be great. So we've got Google Hangouts from Amy, Zoom, Google Hangouts, Zoom. Yeah, so a lot of people using Zoom. WhatsApp is a good one, video call. Somebody saying Teams is a nightmare. We all have different, yeah, so Zoom. Yeah, Google Meetings, I think it's called now, but Google Hangouts, it used to be called. We used to use that a lot. And to be honest, I used to use Google all the time, but it's only since lockdown that Teams came in that I've started using that, because most people use that and Zoom. A lot of people use Teams. We're going to discuss a little bit about security issues in a second. But yes, really good point, Richard. Everybody's using different ones, so you've got to adapt. And when you are teaching, you've really got to consider the platform that's going to give you the most, dare I say, bangs for your buck, okay? Because there's lots of things out there. I've got a few here. That really is just a few. There's so many. We've had people using GoToMeetings. Okay, now that is very much a webinar-based software. However, you will find with things like GoTo and WebEx, they have now brought out, and so has Teams, an education version that costs lots of money. So, you know, we're a small company, and like most small companies, we've gone for the ones that are cheap. Okay, we have invested in the Zoom Pro, which I think costs us less than £9 a month. But for that, we get longer meetings, we get better tools. Okay, so if you are in a position to do that, I would recommend it. Yeah, Go-To Training is their education package. That is very expensive, I believe. And yeah, if they're using that, it can be difficult. Yeah, absolutely. Teams, as I say, they've brought out that. Now, there is Teams education, but that is, I believe, predominantly for schools, and they get that for free because they get Microsoft Office 365 for free. We have to adapt, you know, we have to adapt. Going forward, as I say, Zoom is still my favorite, but I have taught on Teams as well. I've got a few things there. I mean, the main difference, like GoToWebinar, WebEx, very much for broadcast rather than for interaction. And interaction is the key that I'm going to talk about today. So basically, as I say, the two that we use at Panda, Zoom and MS Teams, mainly because most of our clients are using either of these, mainly Teams, if I'm honest. Zoom was designed originally for webinars and meetings, okay? And because of that, you know, you might think that there's limited tools, but actually the tools that with updates that they've brought in are absolutely brilliant for online teaching. MS Teams has some as well. Adobe Connect, yeah, it's fantastic. Again, though, some people may not be in a position to use that. So we've gone for the one that most people use. So Zoom is freemium. There is a free version of Teams as well, but freemium just means that there's a free version and then you can upgrade to get further features if you want to. What I like about Zoom the most is that you've got annotation. I'm not going to ask you to annotate now, but you can bring up an annotate toolbar. So if I wanted to, I could put lots of hearts all over my screen. I could draw, okay? I could draw lines or whatever. Or more importantly, if you want to do a whiteboard activity, then you can type answers. So ask questions and type answers actually on the screen. You don't have to use a whiteboard. Beauty of that, you can also save it. So now I'm going to save what I've done. Zoom will save that for later and I can clear and move on. So really you could use a PowerPoint slide, you could use a document, a picture, anything, and people could write their notes all over it. It's a really good interactive tool. And that, do you know what, I only realized that about a month ago, that I didn't have to keep switching between my PowerPoint and a whiteboard. I could just annotate on a blank PowerPoint screen if I wanted to. So that's, you know, that's something that's really helped me. So going back to the slide, oh, hang on, I'm still typing. Let's get rid of that. And there you go. Obviously, I haven't learned everything because I forgot about that. So I'll just shut that down. So in my opinion, these two platforms, Zoom the most, has the most features that we can use for really good interactive online training. Whereas Teams, you know, let's not forget, Teams was originally designed for teams in one organization to talk to each other, okay? And for that, it's fantastic. There's loads of features, there's whiteboards, you can go into separate meetings and separate rooms. When it comes to communicating with people not in your organization, it can cause a few issues. So for example, if you invite people to a Teams meeting, so your learners say, and bring them in, that's a really good point, which I'll come to, Richard. So if you're inviting people from the outside in, they won't be able to use certain things in Teams like the whiteboard, like sending files to you and other things. But there's usually workarounds, it just takes a little bit longer. Going back to security, Richard, Zoom have been a bit naughty because they had all of this controversy at the beginning of lockdown, so they had to act on it. And they, to be fair, they have done a lot. and introduced big updates to make it safer. And now, as you know, there's a lobby, so people can't just come straight into your meeting. You have to let them in. There's passwords, which are now mandatory. There's lots of features that you can lock the meeting, okay? There's lots of features. However, they did say that with the last update, version 5, at the end of April, I believe, that it was end-to-end encryption, but actually it isn't. And they're now being criticized. And actually there is a lawsuit going on in the US at the moment because of false advertising. However, it is enhanced encryption. So yeah, absolutely. And you're right. A lot of public bodies will not use Zoom, which is why we have to adapt and use Teams. And I do understand that. We've never had any trouble with Zoom, but I understand that certain IT departments, especially in public bodies, will not allow Zoom. Again, there's some brilliant features in Teams, but as I say, you will need to invite your learners as guests to get some features, but you won't be able to use all the features unless they're in your organization. There's workarounds, you know, there are limitations. I know that teams are thinking about bringing in breakout rooms, and we'll go through that in a second because breakout rooms are fantastic for online live learning. You can do it at the moment, but it's really complicated. I have managed to do it with one organization, but it took a while. So yeah, Zoom is my preferred one for that reason. Top tips for platforms: do get to know your platform. I think the one thing I didn't do at the beginning was I didn't practice with 2 PCs, or maybe my PC and another device, to see how the learners see it. Because, you know, there I am saying, right, and if you go to the top right-hand corner, you'll see this. Well, you know what? Maybe you won't because you're using an iPad or a phone. So always get to really know your platform. Look at the advanced settings, okay? Because you'll find out, oh, I can't use a poll. Why can't I use a poll? It's because you have to go online and look at your advanced settings sometimes to set that up. Okay. For example, I only found out recently that you can only use polls in a scheduled Zoom meeting, not just one that you start from scratch. But whatever's out there, we adapt, don't we? So hopefully these tips will help you to adapt, but use whatever's available to you. Engagement. Okay, so there's Mowgli there. Being entranced is difficult. It's difficult to engage everybody all the time. But remember, what we're talking about is live online sessions, okay? Group sessions or one-to-one sessions, but not a webinar. Get in that conversation, the discussion going, not a webinar situation. One thing that I would sort of recommend as well, everybody says, don't they? It's like, oh, the human being, adults have an attention span of 20 minutes. That's the old teaching theory that we always used to teach. But you know what? I think that has changed. And I think in lockdown and on online platforms, I think that has completely changed. I would say, and please feel free to comment in the chat, I would say that maybe we're a bit more like a butterfly and a goldfish at the moment. I mean, I'm not gonna, well, yeah, I will say this actually. I reckon, I know, I've been on so many webinars. In the first 3 weeks of lockdown, I was about 3 webinars a day. I'd switch my video off, I'd go and have a cup of tea, I'd come back, still going on, I'd listen in. Not saying that you guys are doing that, hopefully you're all still there. But we've got lots of stuff going on. Homeschooling. I'm sure lots of you had to do homeschooling. I know Rachel did, and she found it really challenging at times. So, and thank you, Nikki, it's your amygdala. Yeah, it is, it is. Concentrating, very hard to concentrate. So the key to that, use as many tools and as many little activities. You'll notice today we're in a webinar situation, so we've tried to use Mentimeter, we have used questions, a poll here and there, and that's all you can hope for in a webinar situation. But we're going to go through a few tools that hopefully will help you to come up with some really good activities later on. But get to know the tools of your platform. And I'm not saying use all the tools all the time. You might just want to use the chat. I mean, for example, in Zoom, we've got this chat window, okay, that we've been using. Now, we've been sending messages to everyone, but you can actually send private messages, okay, which is fantastic. Safeguarding, of course, you always have to think about that, as Shan explained to us earlier. So I could pair you up now, and I could ask you to private message your partner. So I could put Rachel with Nikki, and they could speak together through the chat window in order to answer a question, say. So if you don't, even if you don't have the breakout room facility in your platform, maybe you could use that instead. Always plan in your engagements. One thing I've learned, I think, is that things seem to take longer on Zoom, whether it's the technology, sharing screens, things like that. Things do tend to take a little longer than face-to-face. Don't do what I'm doing now, which is lecturing and talking, because this is a webinar situation. In a classroom, I think, you know, most people would give some information, maybe for 10 minutes, got their PowerPoint up, and then do an activity. Try and make it a little bit quicker than that. 3 minutes talk, small activity. Okay, short and sharp. And it gives you a really good way of seeing if people are with you. Assessment for learning. So facilitation and tools, everything's changed, isn't it? So my top tips for facilitation, don't try and do too much. I'm pretty sure that in the early days, I was trying to cram everything in into a short session. Try and keep it simple. Now this is something that when I first heard of this, about 5 months ago, somebody said to me, oh, you've got to use a producer, Ros. And I was like, oh, what? What is a producer? And it's actually somebody that sits in the background like I've been doing today. So while Nikki was presenting, I was in the background doing the Mentimeter, screen sharing, getting all of that ready, looking at the chat to see that. Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, Nikki and I have been doing the mental health sessions together. So Nikki has been presenting and I've been producing in the background, getting polls ready, getting breakout rooms ready, so that Nikki doesn't have to be under pressure and think about that, because she's got to think of all the stuff that she's presenting on. So if you can, I would definitely say get somebody to sit in the background and take over if they need to, because you know what happened the other day? Another thing we've learned is that Nikki's internet went down and I had to take over. So I stepped in. That went very well because I had a lesson plan. So always have a lesson plan, a facilitation plan. Nikki and I always go over that before we start. So when she disappeared, I asked a question in the chat, and you know, that kept things going until she could log back in. So it always pays, if you can, to get somebody to help you in the background and just do all the other stuff. And if things go really badly wrong, they can hopefully step in. So yeah, lesson plan, definitely. Give really clear instructions on how to use the tools. We always at the beginning try and say, look, if you're going to put your hand up to ask a question, use the hand up icon if that's available in your platform. If you want to make a question or a comment, do so in the chat and this will happen. I will then get back to you. Make it as clear as you can. Always do like an induction into your tool, because I just assumed that everybody knew what they were doing and nobody could actually take part in my whiteboard activity because I hadn't told them how to do it. So it's just these little things that, you know, planning and preparation, and slow down, because I'm aware that I'm probably going very fast at the moment because of time. You know what? Take a breath, like Nikki said, slow down and try and be yourself. Don't think that you have to be this sort of super robots teacher online, okay? We've always tried to sort of bring in the personal side, so we'll get people to unmute, we'll have a chat before we start, etc. But this is the big one, size of classes, okay? For an interactive live online session, I would say no more than, no, but Rachel's telling me to speed up, not to slow down in the private chat. So I would keep your groups for, if you're doing a group session, to under 10, because there's no way you can get to every single person and to differentiate with more than 10, in my opinion. You can get much better interaction. Okay, so tools. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a couple of tools that I think are really good. There'll be links, etc., later on for you. So in the tools, we've got two sections. Okay, so we've got the in-platform tools we've already talked about. Use them, get to know them. They're there for your help, so, you know, use them. But the external tools, it's not as difficult as you think. All you have to do is just screen share in between your browser and your PowerPoint presentation if you're using one. So, for example, we have used Mentimeter today, but we usually use things like Kahoot, so an online quiz. And that's quite good because it's a bit of fun. It gets everybody sort of competing with each other. But you've got my top tips there. I would say the top two for me, Padlet has saved my life during lockdown because we use lots of things in Padlet, which I'm going to show you now. Hopefully. There we go, see? I'm still learning. So here's one of the Padlets that I use on the Award in Education and Training course. You'll see some lovely gurning photos of me there, just to add a bit of humour. But great for card sorting exercises, okay, or matching any, you know, cards, activities you would do in class, you can do on a Padlet. Really good for just getting people that are kinesthetic to actually do something a little bit more practical than just type in a chat room. Okay, Google Forms, again, brilliant because you can just do a really quick Google form or a Microsoft form, very similar tools. For example, this is just like a very short 3-question. I'd send it out. I'd put the link into the chat, send it to my group. They'll fill it out and I will get the results. And it's very visual. You can use that. That's really good for assessment, great for initial assessment, but also really good for discussion points. So you can get the feel of the room and basically, maybe you could go into a breakout room and discuss what the poll has said. Okay, so it's just a little bit more interactive, but Google Forms is a great one for assessment as well. Yeah, Microsoft Forms allows you to run polls in Teams like Zoom. Yeah, fantastic. We've just started using Microsoft Forms and yeah, we really like it. Thanks for that, Richard. So design and structure. I am a big Post-it fan. I wish I had shares in it, but I do not. And session design is something that I would say takes some time. I think what I've noticed the most with people and the training that I've sort of participated in rather than deliver is people have just maybe just transferred what they would do in the classroom, maybe a day-long activity online. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that for many reasons. Planning, and you know, I'm always banging on about planning, but I can't recommend it enough because you have to plan in for, okay, we're using a variety of tools, just like you would in the classroom. Are they interactive? Okay, what about the people that don't like watching a video? What am I going to do for them? And things like that. So it's, you know, things, as I say, may take longer online. But the thing that I think people are forgetting is you still need a learning objective. You still need learning outcomes. Otherwise, how are you going to assess that anything's happened, any learning has taken place? Because this is, we're not talking about webinar. We're talking about learning. Lesson plan, lesson plan, lesson plan. Any type of facilitation plan, even if it's Post-its, okay? But plan it out. Plan what you're going to do and when. How people are going to interact. Have you given them the tools to do that? Have you missed anything out? I just want to use a poll. We're really going for the polls today, so please take part. What I'm going to do is just go to a different poll, and I just want to sort of ask you, how long do you think, from your experience through lockdown, how long do you think is the best time to run a group session? Okay, so results are coming in. I love these polls. So far, yeah, we've got the top 3 coming in. Excellent. Okay. Most of you have voted, so I'm going to end it there. Thanks very much. And most people are saying 1 to 2 hours. I agree. I agree. Most of our sessions are, we've gone for 1.5 to 2 hours. We started with 1.5 hours because it was Rachel's idea that actually, if there's anybody, any mums or dads that were homeschooling, they could possibly, not recommending this, but possibly put their child in front of an educational video whilst they partook in the session. Under 1 hour, yeah, it depends. It depends. If it's 1-to-1, if you want a really good interactive session, yeah, it may be 45 minutes. Do not do an all-day session, in my opinion. Okay, when we locked down, and I already had a face-to-face class booked in for the next day. So I very quickly had to just say, look, guys, we're going to do it online. And what we did, I did it online. I just did the whole session all day. Yeah, don't recommend that. It's hard for you. It's hard for your learners. Yeah, Rachel, thank you for that, with a bowl of popcorn. Lovely. Or other snacks are available, maybe some fruit. Okay, so thanks for that, guys. I think you've got the gist of this. 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes I would put a couple of breaks in there. We're probably breaking our own rules today. We're coming up to 2 hours, but almost through. And thank you for taking part in our polls. Okay. So to finish, a lot of people have said to me over the past few months, yeah, but online learning, no, it's not the way to go. You can't get proper learning. And I have to say, I disagree. I think that as long as you're planning, as long as you're using the right tools, and that you're confident, only do all the tools if you're confident. But it's always going to be about the learning, all the good teaching stuff that we know, okay, the good practice, like make it participative, differentiate, play to the learning styles, make sure you're encouraging all the learning styles. Constructive feedback, assessment for learning. You can do all of those online. I do believe that a lot of people have seen this now as an option. You know, in the past, a lot of people have said, I will never go online. I hate digital stuff. But lockdown has taught us that we've had to do it in at the deep end, whether we liked it or not. And I think that's opened a lot of people's eyes. So yeah, I mean, my top tips, my cream of the crop, okay? Do practice, but practice with a couple of devices. So you can see what your learners are going through and that things work. What do they see? Because believe me, they see completely different tools to you in some platforms. Always start with a learning objective. Why wouldn't you? You have to know what the outcomes are before you start designing. Use a variety of activities. You know what, even if you use just one tool, like the chat window, just use it in a variety of ways. Pair people up, get people to maybe send a photo, whatever. Safeguarding rules, of course. If you can, use a producer, because it really does take the pressure off. Even though for my sessions, I usually produce my own and deliver, but that's just because of, you know, I'm used to doing it. But if you can, get somebody to help you, it really does help. Remember the professional mindset. I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys, you all know about professionalism, but really, you know, this is your classroom, so treat it like one. And use interactive tools like Padlet, if you can, to get those kinesthetic learners to do something slightly different. We're going to finish, like we started, with another little video, some training and teaching that maybe hasn't gone right. And this is all from one school in South Africa. Hopefully they're better at it now.
Morning, girls. It's so lovely to be in your homes today and I look forward to us going on.
Coffee.
We are sitting on that and
Cooks, what are you doing?
I'm just trying to upload the video for the kids on
Your camera's on then.
Which means that it's two words that we put together to make another word.
So I'm going to just share one Bible verse with you today. And the I'm gone. Blessing, I'm gone.
Moon and light form moonlight. The next word we have is cooler bag. Cooler bag can also be a compound word, cooler and then bag.
And he was always the hero.
I'm so excited. Sorry. I'm so excited to be starting term 2 with you.
And we have got Simon, I'm recording!
So, my advice for studying this section: keep 2 timelines. Keep one for the opposition movements or the liberation movements, and then one for what the government.
It would be remiss of me not to plug our new course, which is Train the Virtual Trainer. Very much like Train the Trainer, but it's all about online. Ends with an online microteach, but very much looking at how we transfer normal teaching practice and pedagogy over into the virtual world and how we can get the most interaction with our learners. If you go to bit.ly/virtualpanda, you can find out more. So Rachel, back over to you. Sorry if I took too long. She was telling me to speed up there, but there we are.
No problem, Ros. The one disadvantage, I think, of being in this situation is that usually when we're in a room together, I go like this to hurry her up, but she can't see me doing that.
Which is a good thing. So it's an advantage.
Okay, so thanks for that, Ros. And I just want to have a little chat with everybody just about professional learning in the post-16 education moving forward. Post-16 education sector. So last year, Welsh Government completed a professional learning scoping study. They spoke with 364 staff from across 30 providers in work-based learning, FE and ACL across Wales to gauge their experiences of professional learning. So here are some of the outcomes from that report. They found that there was skills gaps, particularly in pedagogical teaching skills. And as we know, most assessors or vocational coaches or whatever you want to call them come from industry, so they may not possess the teaching training skills like teachers do. They're not trained in that way. They're experts in their fields. They might be plumbers, they might be electricians from a management background. So in previous years and many years ago, the role, particularly in apprenticeships, has been the assessor, a ticking the box job, rather than an educator. But over the last 10 years, we've definitely seen a shift more towards an assessor being a tutor, a teacher, an educator. And that's why that these skills are now more important than ever. So, you know, we've got the developing questioning techniques, looking how to structure learning and stretching learners, and also providing constructive feedback. For those people like myself, a few years ago, 20 odd years ago, I was an apprenticeship assessor. That's how I started. And my qualifications that I had was the assessor qualification. And at that time, we didn't have any sort of teaching skill. We didn't need that, but now we do. And, you know, that's part of obviously why we set up as Panda, to help assessors and people in post-16 develop these skills. The other thing, obviously, as qualifications start to move online, people using e-portfolios, introduction of digital literacy, essential skill, businesses becoming more digitally literate, there's been a huge shift towards practitioners needing digital skills. GISC recently published the 2030 framework for education in Wales, and they asked for providers to equip learners and staff with the digital capabilities and confidence that they need to succeed in everyday life and in work. Obviously, since the start of COVID and lockdown, these skills have become more important than ever. And something else, obviously, that is really important that we covered today is mental health and well-being. And practitioners should be aware of different mental health conditions, how to signpost learners, how to work with employers and have conversations with learners around mental health issues. We're lucky enough today to have Fiona Argent with us from the NTFW. She's the head of quality. Fiona, would you like to unmute yourself and just say something about the scoping study and the professional standards for us?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for inviting me along today, and congratulations on the anniversary. Yeah, the professional scoping study, I think, as Rachel's pointed out, has had some highlighting issues that I think as a sector we weren't particularly shocked at. I think they were very much what we thought we knew anyway. But I think what the study's actually done is expedited a few activities really within Welsh Government in relation to the professional learning and professionalisation of the post-16 sector itself. So as a result, since the study was published, I think it was last November now, the Welsh Government have actually set up a workforce development group, almost like a task and finish group really, and they're really there to drive the agenda forward over the next sort of 3 to 4 years. Hopefully it will be before that, because as a sector, as you probably know, we're probably the only educational sector that doesn't have a qualification to get into the workforce, and the EWC are obviously quite keen to work alongside Welsh Government in developing this. So there's a lot of work going on in the background. The workforce group has only been set up in the last couple of months. It's been sidelined a little for obvious reasons. But their message is really to develop a professional learning framework, which will be established on the principles of co-production, providing a clear vision, direction and development to all staff within the sector. And this professional learning framework will very much be based on the professional standards for learning and teaching in the post-16 sector. We're not sure yet how they will look. Obviously, there's an awful lot of groundwork to be done. But as Rachel said, there's a lot of things in there that we can build on. Most people within the sector have qualifications, certainly, that enable them to practice. But only 50% of practitioners in post-16 actually have a teaching and learning qualification. So obviously, there's work to be done there. But it's very much something that Welsh Government are keen to push through in the next sort of 2 to 3 years. So hopefully we will see something. There will be an awful lot of collaboration and, as I said, co-production with the workforce and with the professional network. So we're hoping that work-based learning will very much have a voice in terms of what the standards should look like. I suspect they will be, it will form a qualification. So it will be a qualification-based framework. But certainly, from our perspective, it's about giving the professionalisation to the vocational educational sector really. HE and mainstream education all have qualifying routes into the sector, and we very much like to see that being the case for our workforce too. So that's mainly the overview, and that's probably one of the biggest outcomes from the study. Digital skills is obviously a big issue, and it was when the scoping study was conducted. And one of the biggest challenges there, I think, was we're quite an ageing workforce. I think it's something like 36% of work-based learning practitioners are are over 50, including myself. So I think there was a bit of a sort of fear there that we didn't have the digital skills that we needed. Obviously, with COVID-19 sort of force in the hand, really, of engagement in terms of using digital platforms and using it to communicate and teach and develop curriculum in the last sort of 5 months has really expedited that agenda. And I think the issues now is not so much the introduction or the implementation of the usage of digital platforms. I think it's more about making it a professional approach to learning. So it's not so much about how we can use these platforms. It's more about can we use them effectively to teach. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but JISC, in collaboration with Welsh Government, have just produced the professional standards for post-16 educators around digital skills. So I'm just going to pop that in the chat there for you to see, and you can have access to. Now, these are all around, so it's very much a competency-based framework, but it's really handy because it allows you to self-evaluate your digital skills right now. But it's also a good framework for employers to also, I suppose, self-analyse really and look at where their workforce is at, and certainly what they need to be preparing them for the future of CPD in the digital world. So I suppose that's the main highlights really from updates as a result of the professional scoping study. And as I said, at NTFW, we're very much part of that workforce development group, and we will be, sort of representing work-based learning going forward to ensure that the professional learning framework is what we want it to be.
That's great. Thanks ever so much for that, Fiona. And that's really useful. And that link as well to that where people can self-assess. Fabulous. I'm sure loads of people will be having a look at that after the session. So that's great. Thanks very much.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. In line with that as well, particularly around the pedagogical skills, just wanted to let everybody know about what we've got coming up in terms of professional learning. So last year we started these professional learning networks, and they were attended by over 50 practitioners across Wales from different training providers. The idea behind them is to get people talking, to develop skills, to share good practice. And these sessions, they last 1.5 hours to 2 hours, all themed around elements that are part of the professional standards, and they can all link back into the professional standards then when you're doing your CPD in-house. You can just use it to develop your own practice. So all these are on our website. There's a link there to those. If anyone wants to come along, you can book on via the website or drop us a line. Starting with reflective practice in September. So reflective practice, obviously a really key skill for practitioners to use, and also really useful for using with learners. So it's a great one there to start with. So like I said, when we first started Panda, the reason we set up was to help practitioners in our sector, and I'll be quick because I know we've run over time, but what we do want to do is move forward in supporting practitioners in post-16. So these are a couple of things that we're going to be doing over the next few months. So we've started like a blog of the month. This month, Lisa Beecham, who's a leadership and management assessor trainer, has written a blog on her journey to going digital. So that's available on our blog. We've got upcoming, we've got Kim, who I've noticed is here today. Kim Jenkins from ALS is writing us one on authenticity during lockdown, authenticity of evidence. And we've also got Deb Burkett from Educate writing this one on curriculum development. So these will all come up. Now we'll post at least once a month, and we'll use practitioners from across the network, people who are doing jobs day in, day out in the post-16 sector. The other thing we've got coming up is videos and resources. So Ros is going to make little top tip type short videos, which we're going to share on our YouTube channel. And she's also, there'll be some resources coming out with this session. One thing we wanted to quickly ask you about before we finish is whether you'd be interested in having a closed Facebook practitioner group for the post-16 sector that we would facilitate. Now, the idea behind this is that you'd support each other. It's not something that we would say, this is how you do this and that, but it would be there for you to support each other with questions. So maybe if you're a health and social care question assessor, you've got questions about the AWIF or something like that. So we've just got a little poll here. If we set up and facilitated a practitioner support closed Facebook group to share ideas, would you use it? So if you could just let us know there. That's great, thanks. Lovely, so it looks like everybody who does use Facebook would use it. So that's fab, so we'll get on to that. And we'll let you know when it's up and running. Actually, if you could follow us on Facebook, you would then see when we launch the Facebook group, or if you follow us on Twitter, we've got our handles coming up on the next slide. But thanks for that. It's really, really cool. Almost 70%, so great. And just lastly, we've mentioned a few of the accredited courses that we already run, and you've got our website links if you are interested in coming on those. You're more than welcome to. How do I go on my next slide? Right, so we just want to say thank you ever so much for coming today. Ros, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, really grateful to everybody coming and sticking with us. We've still got everybody here, so thank you very much. Yeah, this is where you can find us. So we do share stuff that is pertinent to our industry, our sector, to learning, teaching, online stuff. So, you know, it's not so much the hard sell, it's just sharing information so you guys can benefit from it. One thing that I did want to say is that after today, we'll be sending out all of the resources, a couple of extra little surprise resources in there. But also, if you've attended today, we're going to give you 20% off. Rachel hates this bit because she has to do all the finance stuff. But 20% off any PLNs that you book before the end of September. So if you make any bookings by the end of September, we'll give you 20% off those. Please come and join us because we're trying to encourage everybody to share. Okay, because there doesn't seem to be that at the moment in our sector. So thank you. I think what we wanted to do, Rach, is to finish, only if you're comfortable. Those of you that are comfortable, we would like to do a group wave so that we could tweet this out for our birthday. If we could get us back on the videos and just do a goodbye wave. If you don't want to and you want to leave your name there, we will blur out your name so you won't be seen. But thank you, everyone. Hello, Fiona. Hello, Nicola. Oh, it's great to see people, isn't it? Ruth, hello, Ruth.
Lovely to see people's faces.
It is an amazing thing. So we're going to do a little group wave on the count of 3. Are you ready? Now, Rachel is really good at taking screen grabs. Usually when she looks amazing and she's smiling and we look horrific. So, yeah, she's done it already and I'm good. So on the count of 3, Rach.
Okay.
You notice that Rachel is taking an actual photo. I'm going to take a print screen. On the count of 3, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you ever so much for coming and sharing our celebration with us. Thank you.
We're going off to eat the cake that you can't.